Yo, what's going on out there in the land of YouTube? So, listen, I am obligated to make this video. If you are a supporter of the Second Amendment, then you are obligated to make a video about Matt Hoover. Matt Hoover's in jail. And whether you're watching this next week, next month, or next year, hit the like button. And if you support the Second Amendment, put 2A in the comments right now. I called another activist friend 2 days ago when I found out about Matt Hoover. And I said to him, every activist in America has a moral obligation to make a video about Matt Hoover. And I'll make one by the end of the week. My buddy replied with a link to the video that he had made about Matt Hoover. I don't think people really know what's going on. So I asked, okay, let me go step by step here. So, let's do it together. Let me do it together with you. This video is all about Matt Hoover, but this video is also about the ATF and the foundation of the ATF and where they get their power and where their power is derived. If you guys have never used ChatGPT before, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT right now. The questions that I'm going to punch into ChatGPT, I could sit here and lecture and say the things about the ATF that I learned yesterday or the day before about the ATF through ChatGPT. But instead, I want to show you guys, let me give you an overview on Matt Hoover first, because if you are an activist or you support the Second Amendment, you are obligated to do a video about Matt Hoover. I don't care if you have 5 subscribers or 5 million subscribers. We are all Matt Hoover. Every one of us is Matt Hoover. You are Matt Hoover. I am Matt Hoover. Every single one of us is Matt Hoover. You are obligated to do a video about Matt Hoover. So put a 2A in the chat, if you would, 2A in the chat, because everybody has to know what happened to this guy. And then I'm going to show you how the ATF was founded, because I put in there, let me give you the overview on Matt first through a associate of his, because he does YouTube and Matt does YouTube. So let me give you a presentation from a creator here so you can learn about Matt Hoover.
It's bad news for anybody who believes in the Constitution or civil rights. So I realize that's a bold statement. I stand by that, and we will explain to you why that is here throughout the video today. So for those who haven't been following, a gentleman named Matt Hoover has been convicted of multiple felony charges.
Subscribe over here, guys. There's his subscription right there. Subscribe right here to Mr. Guns Gear and give him a thumbs up on his video.
Essentially for doing in-video ads here on YouTube for a product that was deemed legal and then eventually deemed illegal. There are a number of reasons why that conviction could be challenged in appellate court here in the United States, because it's a violation of U.S. law in many different ways. We're going to talk about a couple of them here today. I am not an attorney, full disclosure. I do know one of the attorneys that worked on this case, and I know a lot of people who've done a lot of research into this case. So I'm pretty well versed on it. Not certainly an expert, but I know enough to be dangerous, and we're going to walk you guys through some of the elements of what happened in this case and why this is such a gross injustice, what has happened to these two men. We're going to talk primarily about Matt Hoover, who runs a YouTube channel called CRS Firearms. And he made videos up until last week, like literally last week as of when I'm filming this. He was posting videos to YouTube as a free citizen of the United States of America. That has changed as of Friday. And basically, I made some social media posts. If you guys aren't following me on social media, I recommend you do. That's where you typically will see my posts first. I made some posts there when it happened, and I reached out to his wife that evening just to try to figure out how I could help as best I could with the resources that I have at hand. And more will be coming on that down the road here on the channel. So stay tuned for that. Also stay tuned to my social media because Matt has 2 children, obviously, and a wife. And he was the primary income earner for his family. And now he's literally, as of when you guys are watching this, as of when I'm filming this, he's rotting in a jail cell because of, well, because of some reasons that we'll get into here in just a second. Additionally, another person was sent to prison, has actually been there for over a year and is facing over 100 years in jail. Because of this, the gentleman who I'm referring to owned a company called Auto Key Cards. I'm not sure if that was the name of the company actually, but basically they produced an item called the Auto Key Card. Now, we're gonna have to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here before we can come back to the big picture. So what is an Auto Key Card? An auto key card is a product that is essentially a piece of metal that's shaped the size of a credit card, and on it, it had engraved into it with laser engraving, so no depth or anything like that, so just etched into the surface of it. What could be the drawings for an item that could be cut out and then eventually machined into what's called a lightning link. So for those who don't know, a lightning link is a device that can be used to cause some, not all, the vast majority of AR-15s you cannot use a lightning link in. I don't know the numbers on this, but I would estimate at least 80% of AR-15s in America you absolutely cannot use a lightning link in due to the geometry of the lower receiver. See my video on full auto AR-15s if you guys are interested in that. But anyway, mechanically, most AR-15s in America are now unable to use this type of device, but some of them you can. And basically, if you were to cut out along the lines that were on the card and then do some machine work to it to make sure you get your angles right, it can be used to simulate full auto fire in an AR-15. That's absolutely true. That said, what we have to discuss here is the difference between doing an ad for a product that is not a machine gun, the ATF determined was not a machine gun, and then the act of actually creating a machine gun. Those are very separate things, in my opinion. They should be very separate things for not just the First Amendment reasons, but also for Second Amendment reasons. And so what basically happened was this company was selling these items and the sales weren't that good. They reached out to the folks over at CRS Firearms, Matt, and offered to do in-video ads for his channel. If you guys watch this channel, I do in-video ads all the time. This is something that most of us do because our channels are demonetized, so we have to earn a living one way or another if we want to work in this space. So Matt reached out to his ATF office, and this is not something that's in dispute. No one is disputing the fact that I'm about to tell you. Matt reached out to his local ATF office because Matt is, well, was until Friday, I guess, was a licensed firearm dealer, also has what's called a special occupational tax, or a SOT, you'll hear it called. So he has the ability to manufacture machine guns legally with the permission of the ATF and the Department of Justice. So he reached out to his local ATF office, asked if the auto key card was illegal. His local office told him it was not. At that point, he commenced doing in-video ads for this product to drive sales to the auto key card. Now, the auto key card was marketed as a number of different things. Matt did 100% use language like to order it from an IP address that was more difficult to trace, things like that. And I realized
it says down here in the caption, Hoover operated a YouTube channel called CRS Firearms on which he advertised auto key cards in his videos. Hoover stated that laws only work if we follow them and encourage his viewers to use discreet ordering by mail to purchase auto key cards.
Some folks are already typing that down below in the comments. But again, this is the First Amendment. You have the right to say things like that in America. He wasn't calling for violence. He wasn't calling for someone to be murdered. He wasn't calling for some type of injustice against a group of people. He was simply stating how you could order a product in America that was deemed legal by his local ATF office that he verified before he ran the ad in his video. So he did a number of ads throughout, I believe, of course, about a year on his channel. At some point during that time, the ATF put out a letter. The ATF issues opinion letters. For folks that don't know, the ATF issued an opinion letter stating that the auto key cards were illegal. Owning one was illegal. And the reason for that is, just to sort of deconstruct that for folks who aren't really up on firearms laws in America, Generally speaking, the ATF regulates items as machine guns that can be used to turn things into machine guns. I realize that sounds crazy.
Okay, you have to understand what he's saying here. He's saying right here that that's a machine gun. That's a machine gun. If this can turn your gun into an automatic weapon, then I'm selling you a machine gun. Listen carefully to what he says here.
Because in any other area of law, that would never fly. But that's the way it's been regulated over the years in America. So as an example, on an AR-15, if you have, or better example, on an MP5, if you have an auto sear, so an MP5 is a submachine gun. There are a ton of civilian versions that are semi-automatic only in America, like millions. And if you have the actual sear component, the item that enables the firearm to...
So it's a little piece of metal that you know, I'm not a firearms expert, so
fire in select fire or full auto versus semi-auto, just the possession of that sear is considered a machine gun. So that's the way the ATF views it. They view that little piece of metal as a machine gun. That's the way they regulate that piece of metal. And what they were trying to do here, you know, after Matt had already verified that it was not a problem, was to say that the auto key card is now a problem, and that auto key card itself, the actual device itself, is in fact a machine gun. So, you know, obviously we have machine guns here on the channel, and they were trying to say that a piece of metal that looks like a credit card is now a machine gun. So, okay, at that point, Matt stopped posting ads for it on his channel once it was deemed that way. So that's a very important piece of the case, is that, you know, as an outsider looking at this case, it's hard to say that there was any ill intent in terms of violating the law. But like I said, I know people are already talking about the words he used, and in the press release, the DOJ released it, talking about the words he used. But again, we don't want to talk about that. He's talking about words, just like I'm saying words right now. And ultimately, he is in prison because of words. And so essentially, the ATF issues a statement saying these items are illegal. They arrest the manufacturer of these, send him to jail, and then do an investigation. Prior to that, from what I understand, a bank had turned him in, saying that he was trying to withdraw too much of his own money. Once again, problems in America. If you're trying to withdraw too much of your money, they claim it's structuring to avoid taxes. And that's part of what went into this investigation. In that investigation, they found the payments to Matt. And then, of course, Matt gets arrested. That was over a year ago now, as of when I'm recording this video. And he has been facing charges for over a year. I've texted a couple times with him over the course of that year. However, Matt is not like a personal friend of mine. Again, I know him tangentially because we do the same thing. But essentially, he's been awaiting charges, living in Wisconsin, having to travel down to Florida very frequently, incurring the costs that go into that. A lot of folks got behind, and myself included, a crowdfunder that he put out for his legal fees when it first came up. And the actual crowdfunding site actually suspended his payment, didn't allow it to happen. And that was over 6 figures of income that was withheld from his family that Americans gave to him. Now I'm happy to announce that there is a Give Send Go, and Give Send Go has never been a problem for these types of things. For his,
did you? I just want take this in again.
Put out for his legal fees when it rolled down to Florida very frequently, incurring the costs that go into that. A lot of folks got behind, and myself included, a crowdfunder that he put out for his legal fees when it first came up, and the actual crowdfunding site actually suspended his payment, didn't allow it to happen, and that was over 6 figures of income.
115. Let me make it big so you guys can see it. If you right under here, under DLZ, under the logo on the screen right now, let me see if I can zoom in on it. It says right here $115,049 that they froze on him when he's fighting for his life.
That was withheld from his family that Americans gave to him. Now I'm happy to announce that there is a Give Send Go, and Give Send Go has never been a problem for these types of things for his wife and his children, as well as his legal defense going forward, which we'll talk about here in just a second. This video is probably longer than I wanted it to be, but anyway, so that will be down below if anybody wants to help support his family as well as his legal defense. The link to do so will be down below. But essentially, the whole thing goes to court, goes to trial, which is rare. Most of these types of charges never go to trial. So I was actually just kind of how I viewed this case, right? When it happened, when he was arrested, I was like, man, the ATF must be trying to send a message to people like myself, telling them that don't poke the bear, if you will, which I think is dangerous language. But anyway, trying to send a message. I thought he was arrested simply to send a message, and I thought nothing would ever come of it, because surely someone speaking in America about a lawful product could never be construed as multiple felonies. But it went to court when Matt did not plea out to it and decided to take his chances in court.
And
they actually went to court. I thought it was going to be dismissed because the ATF surely could never think that they were actually going to get a conviction from 12 American citizens saying that this man was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Stop. No. You're not getting 12 Americans. When you're charged federally, you're getting who they're putting there. They're all Kevin's and Karen's squared. Listen to what he's saying. You guys know Rogue Nation was recently convicted and could be facing prison. I don't know the details, so I don't want to say too much on it, but let's finish this one.
A conspiracy to traffic machine guns and other counts as well. But that's essentially the big charge, that he was conspiring to traffic machine guns with Justin Irving, the owner of Auto Keycard. Now, think about all of the things that go into that in terms of like elements of the case. To get someone beyond a reasonable doubt to say that that's what happened because somebody used their free speech on YouTube for an in-video ad on a product that was confirmed to be legal, that's a big step. So I was like, when it went to court, I was like, there's no way this is going to even go to the jury. I'm sure the judge will dismiss it. And his attorneys, to their credit, did file the judgment to have the case dismissed because it is so absurd. There is no way that anybody who is acting in good faith, whether it be within the Department of Justice, the ATF, or any other organization that worked on this case, whether you be the prosecutor, the ATF agents, which we'll get to here in just a second, the ATF agents themselves, who testified in that case, could do so with good conscience. If you're an ATF agent, I believe it's an 18 series is what they call it, which is the federal law enforcement agents, because there's different types of ATF agents, who has law enforcement powers, the powers to put American citizens in prison. They're going to testify in this case to put a man, a law-abiding American, a father of two, a husband, put a man in prison because he talked about a legal item on YouTube, that you could testify in that case and not say anything other than what I'm saying right now, i.e. you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, which includes the First and Second Amendment. You're going to go up there and testify that this man is a criminal?
Yeah.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you. So getting to those ATF agents, when it actually went...
That's what they are. Their job is to arrest us and put us in a dungeon.
To court. Several things happened, and I recommend following John Crump. If you guys do not follow John Crump in his YouTube channel, he's an investigative journalist. He writes for AmmoLand as well. I actually talked to John earlier today, but he did a day-by-day summary of what happened in the case, and you can go watch that series. It's not very long to get a good idea, but essentially...
What he say? Can someone just find this channel? Can someone just...
In his YouTube channel, he's an investigative journalist. And following John Crump, if you guys do...
John Crump, investigative journalist.
Not follow John Crump in his YouTube channel. He's not watched that series. It's not very long to get a good idea, but essentially the ATF agent, one of them who was an expert, took the auto key card, dremeled it out, and took 4 of them, was able to get one of them to work, and it didn't even work. So I want to explain that to the gun community out there, folks who are familiar with firearms. The geese are going nuts. They must not be happy with this ruling either.
So what they're talking about is he advertised a particular kind of piece of metal that if you were a machinist and you could machine out the laser cuttings that said if you did it like this, you could turn your gun into a machine gun. The ATF bought 4 of them, and they could get one of those 4 when they took it to a machine and they actually tooled it out, which you and I can't do. I can't do that. And then they got one of them to kind of work. That's what he's talking about right here.
But the ATF's expert witness, who spent over 40 minutes with a Dremel, according to his own testimony, getting this item to work, modifying it, not in the original form, which is key to this case for folks understanding it, particularly folks who are not familiar with firearms. This is not a readily available item. You cannot just put it in and the gun becomes a machine gun. That's not how it works.
Okay, along the bottom of this, there's a caption and it says, the ATF examined the auto key cards and a firearm enforcement officer was able to remove the pieces of the lightning link from the auto card using a common Dremel rotary tool in about 40 minutes. When the firearms enforcement officers placed the two pieces of the lightning links into an AR-15 type firearm, it converted the semi-automatic firearm to be fully automatic.
This man spent, who's an expert in his field with machine equipment to make this thing into a machine gun, could only get one of the four to work. And when he got it to work, it didn't actually work. It didn't function in a full auto. What it did was getting hammer follow. So what that means for folks who don't understand how an AR-15 works, basically a full auto one anyway, when the bolt carrier group comes forward, here's our auto sear, the trigger is hooked on it, the bolt carrier, the full auto profile version of it, trips that sear. At that point, the hammer goes forward, strikes the firing pin, the round goes off. That's how a properly functioning select fire AR-15, which is really an M4 or an M16 at that point, functions. And he was not able to do that. What he was able to do was to get the hammer to not hook onto the item that would have been the sear, meaning that the hammer just keeps cycling under spring tension. So it's not actually even functioning in full auto. In fact, many of you who own AR-15s may have had malfunctions where your gun doesn't work correctly due to whatever, having hammer follows. So it's not that it's a full auto item at that point, it's just having a malfunction. So again, took 4 of these items, got one of them to quote unquote work and turn it into a machine gun, and that was used as evidence. Now this man testified, this ATF agent testified against Matt Hoover in this case to lock this person up after unsuccessfully getting 3 of these items, and this man's an expert, 3 of these items to not work. And he's there saying that these items are the equivalent legally of machine guns.
So for those people out there who are like law dogs that are like, oh, it's the law. Well, the ATF, we're going to get into that in a minute. I don't want to spoil it, but this man had no victims. Nobody was damaged. Nobody was hurt. There was no threats of violence. Matt Hoover hurt no person. 0 persons. 0 persons he interacted with turned their gun into a machine gun and mowed a bunch of people down. There is 0 people injured. There's no injured party. There's nobody upset except for the government who...
What was going through that person's head when they were testifying? I mean, truly, how is that person waking up today free in America? I'm assuming this man has a wife, kids, family. How is that man looking at his wife in the eyes? How is he looking at his children in the eyes, knowing that he just locked up another fellow American citizen for this item? It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful that any federal agent would do this. Continuing on to the precedent that this sets for other people, not just YouTubers, not just gun YouTubers. There's a huge precedent that this is setting. If you think about it, they're saying that an item that is legal, item A, and then they'd say it's not legal when no law passed during that time period. The ATF, as an executive agency, is just saying it's illegal.
Yes.
And they're saying that somebody who was paid to advertise that item now has committed conspiracy to traffic that item and is guilty of multiple felonies punishable by over 40 years in prison. That's what they're saying. That's the precedent they're saying. So let's just...
Okay, so understand that the item that Matt Hoover was promoting was 100% legal. It was not an illegal item. There was no law written by Congress, signed by the president, that made what Matt Hoover did illegal at all whatsoever. And the regulatory agency that's a part of the Justice Department, we're going to go down that rabbit hole in a second. I'm going to teach you guys through an expert on ChatGPT exactly what the ATF is, how it was formed. We're going to go into great detail.
Keep it in my realm here in the YouTube world, in the Second Amendment world, right? So over 10 years, pistol braces, stabilizing braces, a device that is designed to help initially disabled veterans shoot their firearms more accurately, have been declared legal by the ATF. The ATF has issued numerous amounts of letters, opinion letters, stating that they're legal. They are not stocks. They do not turn your gun into an SBR. Well, as you guys know, earlier this year, the ATF said that they do. all of a sudden, magically, after over a decade of being completely legal, the ATF has said that as of May 31st, if something doesn't happen in the courts, everyone who owns one and hasn't registered it as a short barrel rifle is now guilty of a felony and will be facing up to 10 years in prison. Well, think about someone like myself. I never got paid to do any ads for braces, but if they had offered during the time, I would have. So if they had offered to run ads for stabilizing braces, I absolutely would have done one. I think they're great products. I think they help Americans in a number of different ways. And I truly believe in the folks who are manufacturing the braces. I believe they're doing good work.
Okay. So this goes on for, and once again, let me promote his channel, and then we're going to go into Chat GPT and we're going to learn about the ATF. Okay. So let's give him a shout out one more time. Go over there, tell him Delete Law, saying he has 792,000 subscribers, and this video is 22 minutes long. You want to watch the last 4 minutes?
For the citizens of America, and it's a good product. I believe in it. I would have accepted money for an ad for that, but let's just say I did. Then now, as of May 31st, when they're declared illegal, and all of a sudden I would have been conspiring to somehow traffic in short barrel rifles, which is exactly what they're saying Matt did with machine guns. Both of those items are regulated under the National Firearms Act. Both of those items are felonies if you don't have the proper paperwork for them. And that would just be me, right? So there's other things that go on. For example, in the Second Amendment space, Form 1 suppressors. There's a number of different folks that have done videos on Form 1 suppressors, i.e. a bunch of parts that you get together and they're nothing. The ATF for years said that they were perfectly legal to own the parts, but if you drilled holes in them, then it became a suppressor. Well, in order to drill the holes in it, you'd have to fill out a form. It's like I was just talking about, paperwork. So that has been perfectly legal. Well, as of last year, the ATF all of a sudden said that.
Put a 1 in the chat if it's made absolutely zero difference in gun violence. Put a 1 in the chat if everything that this armed scholar just said, that it has made zero difference in gun violence. Put a 0 in the chat because it's made zero difference in gun violence. You have to go and now register your suppressor. I don't know about you, but last I checked, psychopaths using a silencer to sneak up on people and blow their fucking brains out aren't registering their suppressor with the ATF.
That you couldn't do that. You couldn't have those parts kits. Retailers couldn't sell them. Okay, fine, we have new rules. But then if they were to go back and retroactively say that anybody who either ran a YouTube channel and talked about them, or anybody who was at the range and told their friend how they could get one, all of a sudden they're guilty of conspiring to traffic silencers. Do we understand the precedent that's setting? You can look at it in other fields, right? Like self-driving cars. Those are heavily regulated by the federal government, right? If there was a new technology that came out and all of a sudden, all the different regulatory agencies said it was good, and then there was an accident and then they said it was bad, we get that, right? I don't think agencies should have the right to say that, but we all understand the parameters that we work in with our legal system, right? All of a sudden, if they went back to the YouTube car channels who talked about that technology, were those folks all of a sudden guilty of conspiring to traffic in that technology? There's a lot of rabbit holes that this can go down. You guys can see where it can go. It's very, very dangerous. This is an extremely dangerous precedent. And honestly, everyone, that's to get back to my original point in this video, should be very upset about this ruling. I don't care if you are liberal, conservative, whatever, your civil rights are infringed upon by this ruling. Your civil rights are threatened to talk about whatever you want to talk about. The only speech that needs to be projected is objectionable speech, right? I think we all understand that. Anyone who understands the history of...
See, he misspoke there, because when you speak a lot on camera, sometimes you make mistakes and you misspeak.
Liberty and the history of the First Amendment, we want to talk about. The only speech that needs to be projected is...
that needs to be protected.
Objectionable speech, right? I think we all understand that. Anyone who understands the history of liberty and the history of the First Amendment understands that. So whatever you deem objectionable is the speech that needs to be protected, because if
cops can't tell you to shut up.
people didn't deem it objectionable, then it wouldn't need to be protected, right? We all get that. Okay, enough of that. Anyway, I suppose that is my overall comments on this case.
Okay, so now we're going to go into Chat GPT, and I'm going to show you guys. I asked it a series of questions yesterday, And so I'm just going to kind of go down that same rabbit hole, a little bit different though with you guys, because I was asking it questions, you know, what I could, I'll leave it anyway. I can't get into it. So where does the ATF get its power? The ATF, or Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, gets its power from several sources. First, it derives its authority from various federal laws, including the Gun Control Act of 1968, the National Firearms Act of 1934, and the Explosives Control Act. These laws give the ATF the authority to regulate firearms, explosives, and other related items, and therefore enforce federal laws related to these items. Second, the ATF operates under the authority of the Department of Justice, which gives its further power to investigate and prosecute federal crimes related to firearms, explosives, and other regulated items. Third, the ATF has the power to issue regulations and guidelines. And that's where we get stuck right there, because okay, I'll finish reading this. Related to firearms and explosives, which carry the force of law. The ATF has the power to issue regulations and guidelines which carry the force of law. These regulations can cover a wide range of topics such as manufacture, sale, and transfer of firearms, and can impose various requirements on individuals and businesses. Overall, the ATF's power is derived from a combination of federal law, Department of Justice authority, and its own regulatory enforcement actions. When did the Department of Justice add the ATF? The Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco was added to the Department of Justice at any specific time. Rather, the ATF has a long and complex history that includes multiple agencies and departments. The ATF traces its roots back to Prohibition era in the 1920s, where the federal government created the Bureau of Prohibition to enforce alcohol-related laws. In the 1930s, the agency's jurisdiction was expanded to include firearms and explosives, and it was renamed the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms. For several decades, the ATF operated as a standalone agency with the Department of the Treasury. However, in 2002, the Homeland Security Act was passed, which reorganized various federal agencies and created the Department of Homeland Security. As part of this reorganization, the ATF was briefly transferred to the Department of Justice before ultimately being returned to the Treasury Department. In 2003, the ATF was transferred back to the Department of Justice and has remained there ever since. However, it's worth noting that the ATF has undergone several organizational changes throughout its history, and it's been part of various federal agencies at different times. How can regulations have power of law without Congress passing a new law to the executive? Regulations issued by federal agencies such as the ATF can have the power of law because they're authorized by existing laws passed by Congress. When Congress passes a law, it is often delegates authority to federal agencies to implement and enforce that law. This delegation of authority allows agencies to issue regulations and guidelines to interpret and carry out the law. These regulations carry the force of law because they are backed by the authority of the underlying statute. In other words, the agency is interpreting and enforcing the laws as passed by Congress, and the regulations issued by the agency are a valid exercise of that delegated authority. Federal agencies are required to follow a specific process when issuing regulations, which include public notice and comment periods, and review by the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. This process helps to ensure that regulations are consistent with the underlying statutes and do not exceed the authority delegated to the agency. In summary, regulations issued by federal agencies can have the power of law because they are authorized by existing laws passed by Congress and are a valid exercise of the delegated authority granted to the agencies. Which congressional laws currently give the ATF its power to regulate, to make regulation changes. There has to be a specific bill. What is that bill? So the Gun Control Act of 1968, is that the Gun Control Act of 1968? The National Firearms Act of 1934, the Arms Control Act, right? But okay, so let me get now. So just so you guys know, ATF is a statist. ATF, ChatGPT is a statist beyond all pale. And actually, Colin at DLZ Clips, he knows this. He went on a really wild ChatGPT conversation that he sent to me. But this is a total statist operation. It won't tell me the bill. It says that the ATF derives its power from previous statutes that were passed by Congress. Okay, so these are the previous statutes. So then we would have to go in and undo. We would have to take away the power of the ATF through the Gun Control Act of 1968. This law gives the ATF the authority to regulate firearms and ammunition. So, okay, well then there's the problem right here. There it is right there. We're looking at it. You want to know what the problem is? The Gun Control Act of 1968. This law gives the ATF the authority to regulate firearms and ammunition, including licensing and regulation requirements for firearms dealers and manufacturers. There it is. There it is. For what? For what? Why is that there? What's that little nugget in there for? Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? They've had zero effect on people killing each other with guns. This stems. Okay, let's get into it. Let's push Chat GPT. Let's push it and tell it what we really want. Okay. So, and then the Arms Export Act, this law gives the ATF the authority to regulate export of firearms and ammunition. The 1930, this law manufacture and sale and transfer of guns. The Explosives Control Act, this law gives the ATF authority to regulate the manufacture, storage, sale, and use of explosives. The Clean Air Act, this law gives the ATF the authority to regulate emissions of certain pollutants from firearms and ammunition's manufacturing facility. These laws, along with others, give the ATF the authority to issue regulations and guidelines related to firearms, ammunition, and explosives. The specific regulation changes made by the ATF are often based on changes in the law, court's decisions, public input, not public input, and other factors that affect the implementation of these laws. The ATF changes regulatory standards and creates criminals out of law-abiding citizens. How do we stop this from happening? Concerns have been raised in the past about potentials for regulatory overreach by the ATF, which could lead to the creation of unintended consequences of the criminalization of otherwise law-abiding citizens. If you're concerned about the issue, there's a few steps you can take. Contact your elected representatives. There it is, folks. There it is right there. Contact your elected representatives. And we can go full stop on this right here. You have to have executive power or nothing is going to get accomplished. Anything that the people want will not happen as long as there's not an executive in charge who says, this is the way it's going to go. And they have got to be a searing, hard man or person. They have to be searing. They have to be a hardcore Second Amendment advocate and a rights of the people champion, or we will never, ever look. We created the 1968 Gun Control Act and gave a third party agency the right to regulate firearms, and they can just say, this is a machine gun. Because if you cut this like this with a rotary tool for 40 minutes and you carve it out, you could make yourself a machine gun. I can also make myself a I can make myself a, what was it called? What do they have it? A pressure cooker. I can also use a pressure cooker. You can also use a pressure cooker. Do you have to use the pressure cooker for more than 40 minutes? I don't know. We are all terrorists now. The government's afraid of all of us. We're all terrorists. So if I sell you this box and you can use a machine, a Dremel to carve out what you need out of it, well then, I'm a criminal and you're a criminal. Everybody's a criminal. You better not have a pressure cooker in your back of your car. They're going to question you. What are you doing with a pressure cooker? I thought I was gonna, I was taking over the world. All right, listen, I did my civic duty. I made a video for Matt Hoover. This man is sitting in jail right now. Matt Hoover is sitting in a dungeon right now. The government has called him a criminal. He's not a criminal. He had nothing to do with making machine guns. He loves machine guns. He wants to make machine guns. He loves machine guns. Who cares? He hasn't done any. He's in jail. This guy's in jail. So I think every single activist in America, every single person who cares about your rights, CRS Firearms is the name of his channel. If you guys want to go over there and subscribe to his channel, I think is there it is. So there it is. Any questions? Any questions? I'll stay for 2 seconds and then I'll read some names. Les Paul, what's going on, Ken? So if you guys want to get the flock out of here, I'm just going to talk to my friends here now, the people who came just to hang out with me. I'm going to talk to my buddies here for a second. I have woke up and worked, and I have remained working constantly. And when I hang up this, I will work. Friday night, I will work. I missed the gym a couple days in a row. I'm going to go tonight, but I will work. I don't care if there's 2 people here. I don't. If people will listen to what I'm saying, I will continue. I will not stop. We don't stop. You can't stop me. You're not going to stop me. You won't stop me. I just started. I've been doing this for a year and a half. You can't stop me. You're not going to stop me. You can kill me. That'll stop me. I'll be dead. But I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. One of us has got to get to executive power, or we're cooked. We're cooked. You know it. We'll never have. It's so funny. I was listening to a lecture. I was listening to. Well, why don't I just show you? I want you to hear. This is a teacher's history. This is really, really good. This is really good. Teacher's history of the United States. If you guys have not, so this is what I was listening to. So when I went to
the gerrymandered practice.
Very good. Yeah.
He says that the evil we experience flow from the excess of democracy. The people do.
So y'all, this is a teacher's history of the United States. This is a few years old. He only has 65 subscribers. I'm one of them. If you guys want to go over there and tell him Delete Laws sent you, give him a thumbs up. Let him know I sent you over there. This entire series, if you want to learn some stuff, this guy's entire series, I've listened to most of it. This is incredible. I mean, just incredible stuff. And yesterday I was listening to 70, 78, 79. The Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. I was listening to Madison's bill. Oh yeah, is this what I was? Because you have to hear what, because I mean these guys are history nerds, and you have to hear what they're saying. It was 79. It was Federalist number. It was Federalist Papers.
Hey everyone, Chris here. Thanks for checking out the podcast. And participate a lot of the schedule. The states had laid out schedules for when they would meet, and Virginia and New York were chosen to be at the end. Therefore, there was a pretty good chance that 9 states would have already ratified by the time it was their turn to debate, putting even more pressure on them to join, or else they would be isolated. So you can see going into this, the Federalists had quite a few advantages. So if the Federalists believed in the ratification of the Constitution, what were the anti-Federalist problems with it? Well, the anti-Federalists were primarily concerned, like I mentioned a moment ago, with power being transferred from the states to the national government. They also took umbrage with the fact that this convention came up with an entirely new government. It was their understanding that this was supposed to be a meeting that proposed amendments to the Articles of Confederation. And under the Articles of Confederation, all 13 states would have to approve, which meant that...
So this teacher's history, what he goes into is he talks about, you just have to listen to it because it's so vast. There's so many different chapters of this guy's stuff that are just so unbelievable if you love history. And, listen, a lot of people listen to music when they're putting stuff together. Like I'm constantly working on stuff. A lot of people do a lot of things. I listen to history podcasts. I listen to psychology podcasts. I listen to things that interest me, and A Teacher's History of the United States is an absolutely phenomenal podcast. I mean, it is phenomenal. I'm trying to tell you, go to the very beginning of it, like number 1, and he starts, Chris and his guys, they start all the way back at the foundation. Like I've learned so much by listening to this podcast this past year, and I've listened to almost all of it. So I'm very familiar with this. And in 79, he talks about how we're trying to break away and be the land of the free. We're all these things that we're writing in the Constitution, creating 2 houses. And there's an argument of whether there's going to be 1 vote per state or it's going to be a representative thing. And the way Madison and Hamilton are jousting, and they're really both Federalists, but they're still jousting in their own rights. For the way they present things, there's just so much going on. And then the way Patrick Henry will argue so ferociously for a Bill of Rights, which includes the Second Amendment. And he's a staunch anti-federalist. But the real crux of everything going on, and Chris, he the host of the podcast, I'm hardcore for our Fourth Amendment. So there's a part in here though where he talks about how we're going for freedom and we're willing to do all these things. We're willing to die for freedom. And the slavery thing is so there and so relevant, and how we're doing this 3/5 compromise. And it's like there's such a blind spot that they're going to put a 20-year moratorium on ending the slave trade. And so they're saying that the founding fathers are saying that we're not moral enough and ethically strong enough to end the slave trade. And because we're not morally and ethically strong enough, we're going to kick this down the road for a generation, 20 years. And we're going to kick it down the road, and you guys are going to deal with it. And Chris, this brilliant constitutional scholar who teaches this podcast, he teaches how the sacrifice of continuing slavery is such a necessary evil because of how giant and monumental it will be to form these United States. And this is where I get off the train, because if we had done the right thing, the moral thing, and immediately ended slavery, we would not have the problems we have today. When you truly are passionate about freedom and liberty and life and country, then when you really get into reading the Federalist Papers and you read the lies that they are today, then you just have this, for me, it's a passion that burns inside of me. And they kicked slavery down the road to the point where it became such a stain on the fabric of all humanity that today, what do you hear? You can be canceled and called a racist. I lived it. I started a whole website called Branded a Racist. I was so hurt. It was unbelievable to me. But the stigma and the stain and the stench and the depth of depravity and sickness that it took good men to sit and watch slavery is the exact same thing we're living through today. You cannot look at this system of policing and law enforcing and look at it for 2 seconds flat through an objective lens and say, yeah, what they're doing to people in America is good. It's so, regardless though, I strongly recommend Chris's podcast, A Teacher's History of the United States. I've listened to it all. And so I haven't listened to it all. I've listened to most of it. I'm still up into the presidents. I'm still halfway through, because as soon as we get past Grover Cleveland, I'm gonna start to not be as interested as I am in those really foundational years that created what is supposed to be the documents of freedom and liberty that protect us today. So yeah, you just get into it, and if you're like I am, then it'll fire you up learning these stories. And Chris is a great teacher. So anyway, yeah, there's all that in a bag of chips. All right. And then make sure that you guys let him know Delete Laws sent you guys over there, because he doesn't have any subscribers or anything on YouTube really. So subscribe over there and let him know I sent you. So yeah. And then cool. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Carlos, good to see you. Nice to see you. James, Mikey, Troy, Jeff Hates Pigs, Gloria, JJ Diesel, JZDC Cowboy, Jamie, Dan, what's going on? FDR ended all hope. Oh, with the concentration camps. Yeah. What Dan says here is the same thing that I felt like FDR ended all hope. When over the pandemic, I really got into doing some I got into some research, and I do now too. I guess I'm the same, but everything kind of coagulated for me over the pandemic. And FDR, learning the depths of the concentration camps, and learning that the same man who passed the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, the liberal Supreme Court justice named Earl Warren, who was also governor of California previously, he was also president of the Freemasons for 5 years. When I learned that when we were going through World War II and FDR was afraid of the Japanese, Earl Warren went to go counsel him. I believe it could have been in California. Can't remember the location. And when he went to counsel him, Earl Warren recommended to Franklin Delano Roosevelt that he put the Japanese in America in concentration camps. And then FDR did. So then you go to 1954 to Brown versus Board of Education, and Earl Warren is going to free Black people in America and end segregation. And you start to say to yourself, well, why would Earl Warren do that? He didn't know what those Japanese people were saying in their houses. He didn't know what they were talking about. And so if he doesn't know what they're talking about, lock him in a concentration camp. And so Earl Warren, when he's faced with black segregation, Earl Warren goes to his head and he goes, well, I locked up all those Japanese people just by telling FDR to do it. I mean, Earl Warren's sitting there as a Supreme Court justice, and he knows what he's done. He would later write about it and say he regretted doing it, because he essentially, if you go to the person in power and say, hey, you should kill these people, and then the person in power hurts or kills those people, essentially you did that, right? So when Earl Warren gets Brown versus Board of Education before him to desegregate and essentially overturn Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896, then he says, well, I don't know what they're talking about in black schools. What are they talking about in black hospitals? What are they talking about in black restaurants? I don't know what they're talking about. The exact same feelings he had with the Japanese in World War II. And so he desegregates to assimilate. If you haven't looked up what the word assimilation means, then it means when you assimilate a population or a race, and then they have to assimilate into your customs and your cultures and the way you do things. And assimilation the word is used mostly for Native Americans. But then that's what Earl Warren did to black folks in 1954. So there it is. There it is. There it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, so then the other part, Dan, so Earl Warren is going to appoint, there are 9 Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is going to appoint 7 of them, similar to what Dan Blackburn has said here. Google FDR stacking the Supreme Court. I already have. So the very first Supreme Court justice who Franklin Delano Roosevelt is going to appoint is going to be in 1937. And that is going to be Hugo Black, who's going to come from Alabama and is a lifetime member of the KKK. He gets to appoint Hugo Black, and this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's way to tell white America that he is going to support what they're doing, whatever they're doing. I mean, it is what it is. I didn't make Franklin Delano Roosevelt appoint Hugo Black, who, just by the way, if anybody is good at Wikipedia, if anybody could pop into Hugo Black's Wikipedia page and just change a few of those things on there that are lies, like the first being how he became a civil rights activist from the bench. It is ironic. He did do some holdings and he did have a couple surprising holdings, because I read lots of Supreme Court cases that Hugo Black authored opinions in. And so there was a couple that I remember being like, oh, he did do, he's at least publicly doing this on the side of justice. But I just read the transcripts from the Hugo Black in Terry versus Ohio in 1968. So Hugo Black's going to be on the Supreme Court from 1937, 1968. So 31 years there, You wonder why the Supreme Court has destroyed our country. You had a white supremacist on there for 31 years. Well, I mean, you had a bunch of them. There's, I didn't know I was going to get into this Supreme Court thing, but just so you know, throughout the history of time, there have been several madmen on the Supreme Court. William Howard Taft. But Hugo Black, he did a lot of damage. He did a lot of damage. I can't sit here and talk forever. I better get the flock out of here. But there's the person who did the most damage, though, was Earl Warren. Earl Warren did the most damage. He's one of the worst of all time. So Earl Warren, who was the guy who told FDR to lock him up in prison camps, internment camps, concentration camps here in America. And then just so you know, so then Earl Warren does that, and then Earl Warren does the Brown versus Board of Education, and then Earl Warren, here's the really just juicy. Earl Warren, has everybody heard of Fruit of the Poisonous Tree? It's from Mapp versus Ohio in 1961. Has anybody heard of that before? Just put a 1 in the chat if you've heard Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, when the police will raid Dolores Mapp's house. And then right after that, good night, buddy. Good to see you. Right after that, they passed Kerr versus California in 1963, which Earl Warren does. Because, so let me just, I have my ADHD and I've been talking for 2 hours and I'm cotton mouth. So in 1961, Dolores Mapp took her case to the Supreme Court because the police raided her house without a warrant to get her pornography. They all were infatuated with this woman, and just sick, depraved men, to be honest. And so they got her pornography. She was what she was or whatever. And so then the famous case of Mapp versus Ohio, and we all heard of Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, and any evidence that they get after they go in without a warrant is Fruit of the Poisonous Tree. It's all poisoned fruit, and they can't use it in your prosecution. So then all the police in America go out to the street and start picketing Earl Warren because they want to go in your house without a warrant. The same thing Ronald Reagan wanted. He wanted to abolish the Fourth Amendment. And so then the cops are up and down the highways, and Earl Warren sees this, and he's afraid he's going to be impeached. And so that's why in the 1963 case of Kerr versus California, he completely changes Mapp versus Ohio. And now all cops have to do is just knock on your door first, announce that they're police, and he's going to hinge this off of Brinegar versus the United States from 1949. And so the stare decisis or whatever. And so it's like, and I have to double check, but I think I'm 99% sure the stare decisis is from Brinegar. Or does Kerr get its power? Does Brinegar get its power from Carroll versus United States? I'm going to put everything on a wall for you guys to see. It's so much easier. Like, people made fun of me for putting this stuff on a wall, but also hundreds of thousands of people started following me. I'm going to do something similar, but a little bit different. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, Tom Shaw and Tom Shue, Tom Shue, who was one of the donors in the last things. Hey, Tom Shue, thank you for your donation. I appreciate that, man. Someone contacted me, and by the way, if anybody hasn't got their trifold, today is Friday. If you don't have your trifold by Monday, because we had a turnaround time about 2 or 3 weeks because we went from one factory to another, just contact me, send me your order number, and we will make sure you get your order. But you should have it by Monday at the latest. So excited about that. Anyway, I will get the flock out of here. Thank you guys for letting me talk. I promised another activist that I would make a Matt Hoover video. I'm a man of my word. I'm just doing the best I can. Get the flock out of here. Get the flock out of here. Thanks for coming on my TED Talk. I'll see you guys on the next one. See you on the next one. Later, Gators. Later, Gators. Mikey. Later, Gators. Later, Gators.